Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to all of you in person and to those of you joining us online on YouTube for the third annual Get Home Safe Day in North Dakota event. We are very proud and happy that all of you are joining us and taking part in this wonderful initiative. 3 years ago, we launched this as a program designed to change the hearts and minds of workers in North Dakota, to get them to focus on the real reason why they work and what working safely means for them, their families, their abilities to enjoy their hobbies outside of work. And we've seen tremendous success over those last 3 years. And the discussion continues and new safety ideas are being generated. And that's the purpose of today. Today we are expanding this event from just a regular news conference to mark Get Home Safe Day in North Dakota. We have a tremendous agenda set up today with a panel of industry experts that will be discussing different safety technologies, best practices, a variety of things that every business in North Dakota, every worker in North Dakota can utilize to make sure at the end of their shift, at the end of the day, they get to go home in the same peace that they came in to the work that morning. Today is about learning. It's about sharing ideas, sharing best practices, and we are so glad to have our champion of Get Home Safe Day here to address us and to read the proclamation declaring June 1st as Get Home Safe Day in North Dakota. For those of you wondering, June is National Safety Month, and so that is how we picked this month to dedicate it. And at this time, I would like to welcome Governor Kelly Armstrong, who's been a staunch supporter of this initiative and of the workers and businesses of North Dakota. Please welcome Governor Armstrong.
You know, it's kind of fun. One of my favorite things about North Dakota is it's just coming into rooms exactly like this and talking to people about something you weren't even thinking about. But I can tell you, I think maybe one of the reasons you asked me to do this is because I'm an old baseball guy. We were just talking about state baseball and state softball, and now summer baseball and summer softball are starting. So I used to tell my kids to get home safe a lot. That was usually a pretty good idea if you were coaching third base. I think this takes on a different meaning. But also talking to a former colleague of mine on the volunteer fire department in Dickinson and recognizing, one, as people in first responders, seeing them here and understanding that and knowing that the number one goal whenever you respond to a fire or a car accident or a law enforcement call is that everybody who responds to that incident comes home safe when you're down. And I think as we talk about this statewide and for every industry, which I'll say a couple things about in a second, I think that's probably the most important one because they are literally the people who respond to things. Well, we're all moving away from them. They're all moving towards them. It doesn't matter what it is, right? If firefighters being deployed, if the fire department's being deployed, something's going on. And they don't know what it is necessarily until they get there. And even when they get there, they don't know what it is until they're in the structure. Same with law enforcement. I say it all the time. The only time you know a traffic stop is routine is when it's over. After that and dealing with all of that. So it's great to be here. It's great to be invited by Art. I think we have 3 things that really put this home and why this culture change is important. 1, our number 1 and 2 industries are ag and energy. They're out, you're doing a lot of things, you're using heavy equipment, you're materializing, and there are significant potentials to injuries in every field, but specifically in those 2. 2, we drive a lot and we drive in bad weather. That's the reality of where we live, why we live. It's part of why we like here. So you combine all of those things, and we already start at a scenario where you have the potential for injury on the job. You have the potential for all of those things. So making sure that that culture is deployed statewide in each and every organization, in each agency, in each business is really, really important. And it's technology can solve some of it. It doesn't solve all of it. Being prepared before you do anything, whether it's planting, whether it's rigging up, whether it's going to work on I-29 or I-94 in a construction season. making sure that you have systems in place and a culture of accountability and a culture of caring about your coworkers and your employees and the people who are doing this work is the single most important way to make sure that we are dedicating ourselves to making sure every North Dakotan that goes to work comes home at the end of the day. So it's a lot of fun to be here. And I'd like to say thanks, Art, and thank you to WSI for continuing to lead this initiative. It's an honor to join you for the 3rd annual Get Home Safe Day. Today's expanded event reflects the progress of this movement and the growing interest in workforce safety throughout North Dakota. Safety is strongest when it becomes part of everyday decision-making, not just a policy manual or an annual training. Whether you lead a large company, manage a small team, or are just beginning your career, every person has a role in creating safer workplaces. North Dakota's economy depends on hardworking people in every industry: energy, agriculture, healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, construction, and that's just to name a few. Protecting those workers must always remain a priority, and our administration is committed to ensuring every worker in this state can expect a safe environment from day one on the job until retirement. That's especially important in North Dakota. Again, I said our 2 biggest industries are agriculture and energy, and and nationally, they really are the 2 of the most dangerous industries according to the National Safety Council. I grew up in the oil and gas industry, so I know how important safety is. To be fair, I ran title in a courthouse or bought leases, so I didn't spend a lot of time on rigs. I did spend a lot of time on scaffolding, painting houses for my grandpa. He probably could have utilized this conference a little bit. But no, I got to go on a rig last week, and from the time when I grew up and watching rigs chain up and doing, I mean, this is where technology and attitude of companies can really, really be important. I mean, the difference between going on an oil rig in 1981 and going on an oil rig in 2026, I mean, they're not even playing the same sport. It was the Wild West out there in the early 80s. And now, I mean, the first thing that happens is you recognize the culture of safety and the technology that involves chains. We're not putting casing in the ground with chains anymore. We're using automated technology that keeps the most dangerous part of the activity out of human activity. And it's really fascinating to watch. And but that doesn't happen without companies and employees demanding it and making sure that that culture exists. I also know that every job supports more than a paycheck. It supports family, communities, and our future. When workers are injured, the impact reaches far beyond the workplace. That's why workplace safety matters so deeply. It protects people, strengthens businesses, and keeps our communities and our economy moving forward. We know that the safest workplaces are built through leadership, accountability, training, and a culture where everyone speaks up and looks out for one another. I'm encouraged to see Get Home Safe continue to grow, bring together employers, workers, and safety professionals to share solutions and raise awareness. And I encourage employers across our state to use the tools available through WSI and continue investing in prevention. And that's why I proclaim today, June 1st, 2026, as Get Home Safe Day in North Dakota, stating that we want to build a community in North Dakota where safety isn't just a priority, it's a way of life. To the workers, your voice matters. Speak up, stay engaged, and take care of each other. Together, we can continue building a North Dakota where workplace safety is expected, valued, and lived every single day. Thank you. And next up, I get to introduce our safety champion. Jason Euler is a native of North Dakota. He grew up on a family farm and graduated from Thompson High School. Got a funny story about Thompson. Real quick. So I went to my first year of law school in Williamsburg, Virginia, and it's just south of DC and east of Richmond. And it's a really interesting dynamic because you have Newport News, you have Norfolk, you are the capital of the Old South, but you're basically an exurb of Washington, DC. And so you have a lot of northern culture and southern culture and a military culture and a shipbuilding culture. And it's just really interesting place. The other thing about the law school, which I didn't know when I got there, is it was nobody's first choice except mine. I went because I was going to go somewhere and I wanted to have a car. And in Williamsburg, Virginia, you can have a car. And so everybody who was there had a chip on their shoulder because they didn't get into an Ivy League or they didn't get into UVA, and they were there and they didn't know how to treat me because they'd never met anybody from North Dakota before. In fact, all they knew about North Dakota was the movie Fargo. So they'd ask me where I was from, and I'd say Grand Forks. And they'd go, where is that? And I go, have you ever heard of Thompson? And they're like, no. I go, then you wouldn't know where it is. So they also treated me Canadian. They treated me like I was Canadian. I wasn't Northern, I wasn't Southern. I was a little bit of a interesting place in that spot. I made it 1 year. I came back to North Dakota. Weird place. Very nice people, very, very odd place. And it's also Colonial Williamsburg. So after a long day of not studying, you could go grab a beer and sit down next to, like, actually Thomas Jefferson. You're like, this is odd. Jason earned his bachelor's degree and master's degree from the University of North Dakota, where he studied occupational safety, environmental health, and industrial tech. He worked in safety at UND for over 20 years, ultimately serving as director of campus safety and security. He also taught safety-related courses as an adjunct faculty member in the business college. Since 2012, Jason has worked for Minn Kota Power Cooperative, which is based in Grand Forks and operates a lignite coal-fired electric generation plant near Senna, North Dakota. Jason has consistently led the safety programs for Minn Kota, along with other departments, including training and development, risk management, and physical security. He currently lives in Grand Forks with his wife and 2 daughters and enjoys lake time with the family, hunting and fishing, music, and working on classic automobiles. Please join me in welcoming Jason to the club.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Governor Armstrong. Thank you to Workforce Safety and Insurance for bringing people together today to talk about such an important topic. Really do find a lot of joy and happiness seeing a pretty full room of people really gathered here for this purpose today. Again, Jason Euler. I'm just a simple farm boy from the eastern part of the state. It is kind of an odd thing when you are born and raised on a farm where you've worked with your grandfather and your father, and you get really good at just kind of fixing things the way that you can with the things you have, and using the tools that maybe aren't the right tool for the job, and then suddenly transitioning into a field of safety where, you know, it's a lot about procedures. It's a lot about using the right tool. And so there are times I've had some identity crisis, I'm not going to lie, with what I came from and what I do today. But in some regards, I think that makes me a lot more successful at what I do today, because I have been a part of, you know, a small family farm operation operating when things are a little bit rougher and you maybe don't have a lot of financial backing to do things right. Learning how to weld at an early age, learning how to repair motors and tractors and all the things you learn with Grandpa on the farm. So it's kind of funny, all my years of safety education and everything else, I think I draw back on the tank of what Grandpa and Dad taught me, sometimes as much as I draw on other things. So those are good experiences, and glad I have them, and I'm glad I can transition them into some safety. So one of the things that I guess I really wanted to talk a little bit about is that, you know, safety's been a passion of mine for years in my career, largely because I have seen how things go right when you have organizations that deeply care about safety, empower their employees to do the right thing. I've seen the wonderful things that can be accomplished, people getting home to their families, just as we intend with this campaign. You know, the flip side, and in sharp contrast, I've also seen in my career a lot of times where maybe things could have gone better, and where you did have pretty serious accidents and injuries, whether it was with my employer or with other contractors or employers that we were involved with at my respective organizations. You know, that suffering and pain from those incidents and injuries don't just end with those people. They extend to their families, they extend to their friends, they extend to entire communities. And I think any of you in the room that have ever, you know, lost someone or had somebody serious injured know exactly what I'm talking about. There are some very deep ripples. And when it comes to Get Home Safe and the work that we all do, that's really what it's about, right? It's not about the regulation. It's not about the compliance. Those are tools in our tool belt to help us explain to people why it matters and ultimately what we can do to get them home safe, right? People oftentimes ask me if there's a secret sauce or, what does safety look like? Picture of a family in the park, a dad playing catch with his kids, a mom getting her daughter ready for her wedding. That's what safety looks like, right? It looks like the happy moments of our life. It doesn't look like policies. It doesn't look like training. All the things that we caption when we talk about safety, pictures of hard hats, and I can put on a suit of armor, doesn't make me safe, okay? What makes me safe is the brain that's under it all and how I use that and the choices that I make. Now, the important thing about safety is that I think all of us in this room, we believe that most of these injuries I've just talked about are preventable, right? I think that's the reality. Very few accidents and injuries that happen are truly accidents. Most of them, when you really dive in and you look, you can determine really quickly that, man, if something could have been just a little bit different, the person would have potentially walked away without an injury. So that's the reality. It's not always about the policy violation. It's not always about who was at fault or who was wrong. It's about what can you do every day to just avoid that bad thing from happening, okay? And that's just simple stuff, okay? That's simple stuff. The hard part is getting people to think about that and feel empowered to speak up when they see something that might just be needing a tweak, okay? That's where some of these core pieces that I think culture has been talked about already. We talk about safety culture, but really it's your entire organization's culture. It's really the culture that you choose to adopt in the way that you live and the way you kind of guide your family. And that is a culture that, really has strong leadership. Now that leadership, we always say, it's wonderful here today to see the governor and to see Art and those of us that are career safety leaders. But when I talk about safety leadership, I'm talking about every single person on the crew. Anybody can be a leader, whether it's a safety leader or just being a leader. And that means somebody who's willing to stand up and say, hey, what about this? Or what about that, right? It's just simply having that confidence and that courage to do that. There's a role that administrators and managers and supervisors play. For somebody to have that level of comfort, they need to be listened to, right? Think about it. If the first time an employee speaks up, they're belittled, or they're not listened to, or they're poo-pooed, they're probably not going to speak up again, right? And so that's the type of safety leadership I'm talking about. Amongst employees, it's very important. If you have some experienced people and you have some new people, if that new person asks a question and then they're made to feel slight, that first time they ask a question, they're probably never going to ask another one. Simple stuff. That's culture, right? That's the culture pieces that you really need to work on in an organization. And again, it comes with empowering, and it comes with really teaching people to understand that, treating people with respect and protecting their self-esteem is really an important process. Now, of course, there's accountability. If you have somebody that's making that same mistake over and over again, we have to correct that. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. Talked a little bit about communication already, and I think communication, any survey that you ever conduct of an organization, what could be improved, you're going to see that somebody says communication should be improved. But I think very rarely do people understand what they mean when they even say it. Okay? Does it mean you need to talk more? Not necessarily, right? Communication needs to be flowing in multiple directions. And for safety to work, again, there needs to be, from the very top, a communication of what's expected, what employees are empowered to do, and ultimately that leads up to even stop work authority. And, if you see something, say something. But it also means that that communication needs to come, from the employees back up. So it's really two-way and where people feel listened to and there's open dialogue. Getting into the why, just announcing what's happening without telling people the why, you don't always get buy-in. So that's a really important part of communication that I think needs to be there. Training is a huge thing that's also been mentioned, but again, training goes beyond just compliance. There's a lot of things that OSHA or EPA or DOT says we have to have. And you can do that and you can check all the boxes, but do the employees truly understand what that training was for? Okay, can they actually apply it? Do they understand the why? So I think it's really important, again, to take it a little step deeper, make sure that with any training there is ample opportunity for questions, so that people do, have something that's a little bit fuzzy, they can get that clarification. You do all those things right, ultimately what that leads to is trust. And trust is, again, very important ingredient for any culture, right? What's the hard thing we all know about trust is that it's kind of hard to build, takes time, right? Takes effort, you have to work at it. But what we also know about trust is it can disappear in a flash, right? And so again, I implore everybody who is a safety leader in this room, as far as your jobs and your tasks, make sure you're doing all the right things every day, listening to people, caring for people, to build and earn that trust, because that truly is a critical part. At the end of the day, from what you've heard me say, is really safety is about the people, right? It's about the people. It's about caring for them, to make sure they can get home to their family and friends, just like you want to do with yours. Basically, those best programs are those ones that really are built with that compassion and caring in mind. And so again, keep that at the forefront as you move forward in matters of safety. I do want to say that safety is everybody's job. A lot of times people in my own company, we'll see employees sometimes that kind of tongue-in-cheek tell us, oh, we'll let you guys do that, your safety. And that's what they'll tell me or my guys. And the reality of it is, we're there to facilitate, we're there to help, but we're not always there on the job site. We're not always there in the shop. And so, we can control what we can control when we're there, but nobody needs us to be a babysitter. We need to be leaders, but we need to facilitate so that people can trust each other and actually hold each other accountable. That's a really neat thing about a successful safety culture too, is when you have a crew of folks working together that are comfortable enough with one another that they can speak up, and they know that they're not going to be belittled, they're not going to be barked at, they're not going to get in trouble. They know it's a good exchange and that it's being done to just get better. Okay, critical part. I would be remiss if I didn't also mention, we've talked about workplace safety a lot, and that's really, I think, the root of this program and of our interest here. But let's keep in mind that this culture of safety needs to extend to home as well. And I think about my life, I think about the family and friends that I've had injured or lost, and more often than not, those have been home accidents, outside of a workplace. And it does none of us any good as employers, business owners, to take care of our people when they're within our care and then have them go home and get themselves in a tight spot, doing something in their yard or having fun at the lake, riding their motorcycle on the weekend. So again, we have a motto at Minn Kota Power that is safety 24/7, work, live, play. And so really we try to instill everything you do. Again, we don't want to make you paranoid, but we want you to be safety conscious and be mindful of the choices that you make. Because ultimately, your body doesn't care. The accident doesn't care if you're at work or at home. And when you do get hurt, those impacts to your family, your friends, and the entire community, they ripple the same. We had a tragedy last year at Minn Kota when one of our employees was killed kind of in the fall of last year in a home accident. Very freak situation. Watching that ripple through our company, really our entire region, our entire community, was just really painful. The halls were very dark. It was very quiet for a while at Minn Kota as everybody dealt with that in their own way. So again, just to reinforce, we talk a lot about workplace safety. Sometimes I think, we're a lot safer in the workplace than we are at home. We don't have people watching out for us at home except for ourselves. So again, keep that top of mind. It's critical. Again, that one injury can affect people for a lifetime. So being very mindful to keep it on top. Also, safety is never finished, folks. There's no checklist that you get to the bottom of and you're done. You just start right back again. Conditions are forever changing. Regs are completely changing. But technologies, right? Technologies are changing. And with every new technology, we mitigate some risks, but we create some new ones. So again, being very mindful to always be reviewing, always be improving is a very big thing. To every employer that's here today, again, doesn't matter if you have 5 employees or 5,000, I'm just going to challenge you to make sure that you know leadership starts with you, but empower those people below to have that same expectation that everybody can be a safety leader. To every worker here, make sure that you know that your decisions matter, your actions matter, but your voice matters too. Programs rely on your input. Those of us trying to manage safety from the safety department perspective, where I represent, we don't know what you go through every single day in your job. We only know what we know. So again, for us to really serve you, which is our role, serve you and make you successful, we need your input. Doesn't mean we're always going to take it. Just kidding. We'll always listen. We just may not always have the same fix in mind. And that's an important thing to understand. Sometimes an employee may think, hey, why don't we just do this? There may be very good reasons. It goes back to the why. When employees understand the why, they can at least buy into it a little bit better. So let's continue learning from one another, raising the standard for workplace safety, because I think ultimately what we can do is we can make North Dakota the safest state in the U.S. Really, no matter what the job is, everybody deserves to get home safe, and this program can help us do that. So again, thank you all for being here today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jason, and thank you to Governor Armstrong for being here this morning. Really want to say that this is tremendous to see this many people so interested in this initiative. And each year that we host this, it continues to build and the momentum continues to build. And that's what it takes to change the mindset of people, to make safety a value. So people do think about it at home, at work, having those places to have that impact. Why do I work? It's not just about reducing incidents. This is truly about protecting lives, protecting families, and protecting futures. So for those of you that are seeing this that have not checked it out, I would encourage you to go to gethomesafend.com. That's gethomesafend.com. You can sign up for all of the resources. Each month, WSI sends out safety newsletters. Those newsletters are tailored to specific incidents that sometimes we pick up on when we start seeing trends in, the number of accidents of a certain type that are coming into our office. We can be proactive at those and send out alerts. These safety topics include videos. There's posters you can hang up around your place of business. So this campaign and this initiative is really not just for large businesses that have dedicated safety teams. It's for everybody. If you don't know where to start, how to get a program like this in place, gethomesafend.com has the resources to get you on track. Also, from WSI's perspective, we remain committed to providing these resources. We remain committed to having our loss control specialists that are located throughout North Dakota be your partner, to be able to come out and work with your business to help identify hazards, to show you how to mitigate those things. We have grant programs, we have safety discount programs on your premiums, but at the end of the day, this is about making sure everyone goes home, everyone goes to enjoy their life, the live, work, play mentality. And so we are committed to this. We want you to be committed to this. And we know that we will continue to have success with this program. It's interesting because I'm sometimes asked, well, how do you know? How do you know if safety pays? Sometimes you don't. How do you know what an injury that was prevented, what impact that was going to have, what cost that was going to be? You can't measure it. But that's the challenge. But what I can tell you is that year over year at WSI, the number of claims coming into our office continues to decrease. The trends are going in the right direction. And while the number of claims continues to go down, the number of covered workers and the number of businesses that purchase their workers' compensation coverage from us continues to go up. Those are trends that we want to have. 420 some thousand North Dakotans rely on WSI to provide them coverage. Last year, 16,500 claims were entered into our system. Both are record numbers, and they're both where you want it. We are covering more people, and there are less people getting injured. And that is because of the actions and the mindsets of North Dakota workers, North Dakota businesses, and I believe programs like these and programs that are supported by our industry partners. We want to thank the North Dakota Petroleum Council, the North Dakota Safety Council, the Associated General Contractors of North Dakota OSHA, Vision Zero, the North Dakota State Patrol, the Department of Health and Human Services, and the Governor's Office for their investment of time, resources, promotion of this important endeavor. We also want to thank the North Dakota Concrete Council. They're a supporter of this program as well. They were courteous enough to provide refreshments for us to have this morning, so we want to thank them for their donations. Thank you for being here, and more importantly, get home safe. All right, well, welcome back in, everyone. I know some of you are still settling in your seats, and we are so happy that we are expanding today's program and now get to move into a panel discussion of safety best practices with a number of industry experts, and not just from a diverse group of businesses, but also public sector, private sector, different geographical locations. And so I'm thinking this is going to be a great discussion this morning. How we plan it is we have a number of questions that I will ask of the panel, and feel free to piggyback off answers, things like that. And then toward the end of the discussion, we're going to open it up. So if there's things that you have specific questions about, please be thinking about that, and we'll allow for some time for Q&A at the end, because after all, we want this to be as educational, as impactful for those of you in attendance. Don't leave here without asking a question that you really want an answer to, or if you've got an idea that you're kicking around and not sure how to implement it, raise your hand. Let's have that discussion. Today's about sharing information. Today's about providing those resources that help make a difference in protecting every North Dakotan at work, at play, so no question's a dumb question. I know that because I ask a lot of dumb questions, and people are gracious to me and provide me with the answers that I've probably asked like 14 times already. And Kent is laughing, and a few others are, because they're people that, they humor me and answer my questions. So I appreciate that. So again, every workplace has policies, every workplace has standards, but safety is something that has to be made personal. And so, how do you do that? How do you ingrain it? I don't have all the answers. That's why they have the esteemed panel up here with me. And at this time, I just want to start off the conversation. And before we do that, if you all would just introduce yourself, talk about a little bit of your background, what safety means to you, how you instill it in your coworkers and the people that you manage and that you work with. So if you'd like to kick us off.
Sure, yeah. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Trooper Bennett Bitts with the North Dakota State Patrol. I am the recruiter and the organizational development officer, which is a really long way to say I'm a technology researcher. I'm trying to advance technology in our department, help make our troopers more efficient, safer, be able to get home safer. Obviously, with all the new technologies in law enforcement is a growing industry. So there's plenty out there, and my job, and I'm really happy to be part of it, is try to find those technologies, and implement them in our agency. So I've been a trooper for about 11 and a half years. I did 3 years on the road in Jamestown, moved to Bismarck, and I just moved to, was on the road, was on the road until last November, where I moved to headquarters in my current role. So I've been a road troop for about 11 years. Been out there responding to calls every day, stopping cars, responding to crashes, telling people that their loved one didn't get home safe. That's something we want to try to avoid as much as we can. So.
Hi, I'm David Moore with Busy Bees Hot Oil Incorporated out of Williston, North Dakota. I'm the general manager there. I graduated Minot State in 2006 with a teaching degree, and I moved back home to Williston for a summer job, and it's just kind of been a long summer. That's what I like to tell people. But since then, I've worked at 3 different companies and kind of done a lot, worked from the bottom and moved my way up within, so I've had kind of a taste of everything. Right now with the general manager position, I'm over a lot of different things. Safety and DOT is one of them. And I think as a leader, what I've got over from the course of my career is just empowering people to be leaders themselves, training them to be leaders. We have a lot of lone workers in the specific jobs that we do. So guys are by themselves a lot, making choices, making the decisions for themselves, and then creating that mindset and that culture for them to want to be safe and do things the right way is really, really important. And it's a struggle just with the world these days, what people are consuming, what they're putting into their minds and their thoughts with their phones or their technology themselves. It's hard to overcome that sometimes. So just being able to help train them and lead them in that light or to a better direction is the obstacle. But that's the mindset that we're taking at Busy Bees, is trying to empower the employees and lead them in the right direction.
Hi, everybody. Again, Jason Euler. So I grew up kind of in the Grand Forks, Thompson area. I went to high school in Thompson. Grew up farming, but never really got the opportunity to make that a career. So went to school and got a part-time job working safety at UND. And again, part-time turned into education, turned into ultimately working there for about 20 plus years. Transitioned to Minn Kota Power Cooperative here about 14 years ago. We are a generation and transmission electrical utility cooperative. And so what that basically means is we make power and we transmit it at very high voltage, where we hand it off then to our member cooperatives. So these would be kind of the ones that deal with the farms, the businesses, the communities, and sell it. So I joke around, I'm like, if we were the bakery, we make the bread and we drive the bread truck and then we sell the bread to the grocery store. That's kind of what we do, only we do it with electricity. So my role there is the safety manager. And what that basically means is my job is to make people successful, no matter what their role is at the company, to give them the tools, the resources, to be a resource, to empower them, maybe answer questions, to help explain the why, but basically give them what they need to get their job done safely and get home safe at the end of the day. That's really what my role is.
Well, thank you all for being here, and we really appreciate your willingness to be part of this discussion. And I think, as you can tell, we have a diverse group with us, but every business, every occupation does have, its own level of unpredictability, high-risk environments. And so, when you look at your areas, is there something that you can discuss as maybe that you saw as an emerging risk, and whether it was newer or less understood? How do you address that? How do you adapt safety practices in response to changing environments or technologies? David, you talked about that. I mean, people being distracted behind the wheel. What are some things that you're finding successful in mitigating risks, specific to the areas that you're responsible for?
For the oil and gas industry, I think something that is a strength of ours is being willing to accept change and see what's new and be willing to try different things and see what you learn from that is important. I'm here probably specifically because we rolled the dice on a technology grant and we got it. And the fruits from that were a lot more than what we expected. When I originally looked into we had cameras and stuff in our trucks and in our semis already. But for the increased telematics, the data and information, it was more money than we thought it would be worth, because I was essentially going to use that for some DOT managing driver miles and our IFTA, so in between state mileage. So I thought for 2-3 hours out of the month, me compiling this data and sending it out, it's not worth X amount of dollars for Busy Bees as a company. Technology grant came out. I was like, well, we'll try it for this. And we were accepted. We got the increased telematics and information, and the information that we got from that was extremely powerful. We saw where we were at, and as far as on speeding, we thought we already had the Big Brother program going with these guys with the cameras and all the information that we thought we were having, but it wasn't enough. There wasn't enough accountability. There wasn't enough tracking. We're not a large company, but there still is a large enough fleet to where it would have been a lot of work for even our operations managers to keep track of. So the information that we got, it gave us real live feedback of where our drivers were, and it allowed our operations managers to give immediate coaching to those drivers and follow up with that, as well as it gave me an opportunity to manage those managers as well and hold them accountable. And we saw within 2 months or 6 weeks, probably, we saw an immediate decline trend that was very, very good for our business. And we've just kind of held on to that since then.
Yeah, and what David's talking about is about a year ago, WSI has done a pilot program for safety technology grants. This allowed you to increase your telematics and finding out what your drivers are doing. Can you give the examples from when you started to right now, what you've seen in reductions in things like hard braking, excessive speeding, all of those things that can contribute to vehicle accidents and those type of things?
Right. Yeah, the amount of events that occurred were in the thousands. And now with increased numbers, increased mileage, and increased work, we're down it's down in the low hundreds for total events. I can't remember the exact numbers on the spreadsheet that we made 6 weeks ago on it, but it's extremely low. I get feedback weekly as far as where we are at, as far as on our numbers, and we've just maintained and just continue to get better. But it was really shocking as far as just the amount of speeding that employees were doing alone, which after that, every turn you make is going to be a harsh turn. Everything is going to be a harsh break after that. And it's just the trying to save time, but we cleaned it up right away, and I feel like we're probably just as efficient, if not more, because of it.
I really appreciate you sharing that. And those are the type of things that, in order to move the needle when it comes to safety, is you have to constantly be looking ahead and seeing what other technologies are out there. I mean, I would imagine at Minn Kota Power, you have had to do that over the years. Even in the 14 years that you've been there, things have changed. Can you talk a little bit about some of the technologies and the safe practices, and how specifically do you gain that buy-in when you're introducing new practices, new procedures with the workforce? Any experience with that you would like to share?
Just a little bit, Art. So I will, piggyback on kind of telematics, and we call it our AVL system, or our automatic vehicle location system. Minn Kota has been operating one for probably 12 years or so. We actually do not have cameras, but we do have kind of real-time monitoring that helps us determine things like speed, seatbelt utilization, certainly a visual of where everybody's at any given time, which can have really large implications from a crisis need too. If somebody needs help, or even just from a workflow perspective, somebody's wondering where somebody can give them an extra set of hands, all the employees can see where any vehicle is at any given point in time. And so similarly, we've drastic reductions in speeding, and we drive a lot of miles. I think Minn Kota drives a total of like 1.6 million miles a year, which is a lot. And if you think about, a lot of those miles are driven in larger, odd vehicles when the weather's not so good and our people are responding for outages and down power lines and things like that. So I'm proud to say that with some of that and with a lot of the training, we've partnered with the Safety Council to offer defensive driving for all of our employees as well. We're a few years in the running and we haven't had a single motor vehicle crash, recordable crash. So great streak. I don't want to curse it by mentioning it, but one of the things we're working on right now, which also will probably have a technology solution, but more than anything, it's really just about the conversation, is lone worker. And I think you mentioned that a little bit ago. We have a fair amount of employees that also kind of work by themselves. And whether that's, one of our communication technicians out working on our communications system, whether that's one of our area line workers, or whether it's somebody from our right-of-way legal department going out to meet a landowner. There are certain things that, you're vulnerable when you're alone, when you don't have that buddy with you or somebody to watch out for. So certainly one of the things that's going to start is we're wrapping up some training targeted specifically kind of to that risk. Again, that risk could be other human beings. That risk could be wild animals in some of the areas that we go to. Medical issues, if you have a problem medically when you're out somewhere by yourself. So we're kind of collating all of that information right now, partnering with one of my sidekicks at Minn Kota to really put together an in-depth training program to really get to the why. And when you talked about how do you get the buy-in, I think it goes back to that why. You need to explain to people, maybe what requirements are, but beyond requirements, why it's important to them in the organization, and then ask for their feedback. I found over the years of doing this that, just putting in this sweeping policy, y'all are going to do this, carry on, doesn't work so well. It's better to present the problem, present the organization's desire to fix the problem, and then ask for some suggestions, maybe with a task group, with a few employees, make use of your safety committees. This is the good work they can help you do. Then they are a part of that solution. Maybe even ask them to help you train some of the others. But that's how you kind of get that engagement and that buy-in, is including them in the process.
Yeah, well, appreciate that. And, we talk about the unpredictable, high-risk environments. Does that sound familiar to you as a trooper? I mean, and the question that always amazes me is like the governor mentioned, your first responder groups, they're the ones that are trained to run into a situation. They're the ones that, you get the call on the radio and you're just having a, perfect day sitting on the side of the road, nice and calm, running some radar, and then boom, you get that call and you have to go. And I think a lot of times people get themselves in trouble in emergency situations because they don't know how to act, how to remain calm. Can you walk us through that mindset when it's time to go? How are you so disciplined to maintain just that mindset to slow down and reasonably assess the situation that you're heading into?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly you're sitting in the media, and then all of a sudden the call comes out of a high risk situation, and talk about the unknown. Everything we do is an unknown. Like we have no idea what we're going into. Just a simple traffic stop, simple quote unquote, right? Is an unknown. But to be able to slow down is a hard thing to do. But what we really rely on is scenario-based trainings. I think that's an important thing to implement in your agencies is scenario-based trainings, and we've done a really good job of that in recent years, where we're able to train our guys to have those events in a controlled environment and be able to think about it then and have feedback from instructors and other troops. Hey, I've been in this situation before. Here's what I did. So it's nice to have that in a controlled environment. So then when you're in that real life scenario, you're able to just rely. It's kind of comes second nature to your training, and not just a one-time training. You got to have repetitiveness. You have to be able to repeat it. The more you repeat a task, the more it's just going to come second nature.
I appreciate that, and it's so often, when we see claims information come in, or we do accident investigations, people will say, "Well, I just didn't think." How do you get people in the mindset to slow down and just think? And I think that scenario-based training, and I think every industry can host something like that and walk through, because the old saying, "Practice makes perfect," and trying to get that mindset shift. And you all can probably attest to that as well, that, well, I just didn't think. In my world, prior to this position, I was in construction, and I heard that all the time. Well, I thought I could. It was only going to take 2 minutes. I thought I could do it this way. I mean, shortcuts, not having the right training, taking your minds off things, lead to big accidents, or can contribute to it. And so communication and training can make or break safety. How do you ensure that the message is being conveyed and that it's being received? Any tricks of the trade on knowing how? I mean, we can sit here and talk about this all morning long. You can host trainings, but how do you know when your fellow employees, coworkers get it and they've heard that message? Any ways to help get the message across that you found to be more effective?
I think just keeping up on the accountability measures with them, but like you said, there's so many unknowns and different things. And I know you were talking earlier about unknowns on how can you put a value to it. But I think as you go through and have different experiences, you kind of develop a faith, right? You develop a faith in your trainings that you're going to be able to go into whatever situation that you're driving to. There's a lot of unknowns, but you've trained for it. So you have a faith backing with that. With the telematics stuff that we got, as far as lowering our speeds and driving better, I faithfully know that we're saving money by having that increased telematics. It's not just, this is the amount of tangible hours that I have. I think that when you align yourself with certain things like that, like you faithfully knew that you're doing these trainings for work when you're going to go to an emergency. So you're buying into that training, you're selling it. And then as an employer or a leader, when you're leading people through different scenarios like that, or when you're training them at the shop and at the meetings, when you can get that buy-in to where they're going to be like, oh yeah, this really does make sense. This is a real scenario. This, maybe I can't see it right this minute because I'm not learning how to do this fire extinguisher with a real fire in front of me, but I know that that's something real.
All well said, and I would just add that, we try to use examples, maybe from peers. We're not the only generation and transmission utility in the nation, and so there are some organizations that we are a part of where we do a lot of sharing of incidents, of programs, of procedures to try to learn from one another. I mean, heck, that's kind of what we're doing today. So I think, again, reaching out to your peers, whether it's your local safety organizations. I know there's certainly one in the Bismarck-Mandan area. We have one in the Grand Forks area. There's one in the Fargo area, kind of throughout the state. And then you also have, of course, your resources like the Safety Council and WSI. But that sharing is really huge. And I like to just use a lot of scenarios that we get, even if they're not our own, because when a bad thing happens, no matter where it is, I think we owe it to the people that had the bad thing happen to learn from it. And if maybe we can use that to prevent something in the future, that's something everybody tends to understand and get. Another lesson that I like to really relate to people is that we don't do it to scare them. We can't be present to warn them of every hazard they're ever going to face. So at some point, we hope our employees mature enough that they recognize hazards themselves through hazard recognition training and what have you. But again, I go back to the example of most of us have flown commercial, right? We're excited. We're going on vacation. We sit down on the aircraft, and the first thing they teach us is, okay, this is your seatbelt. Okay. Oh, and if we have a landing in the water, what? you've got a flotation cushion, and then there's the oxygen mask. That's a warm fuzzy on the way to Disneyland, right? They're not doing it to scare you, right? They're doing it because if you didn't know that stuff, now we all know that, right? And if you're ever in that situation, you've at least thought of it before. You can use that same principle to many of the major hazards that we have in our workplaces, in our homes for that matter. And when you get people thinking that way, that again, it's not to be paranoid and not live your life, it's just to understand some of the basic things that if this ever happens, I guess this is what I need to know. This floats, right? So I like to use those types of examples as well, and I find they really kind of hit home.
So it's interesting. I mean, you look at North Dakota's workforce, and it's very diverse. And so you have, and I'm sure within your own entities, you have new hires that are fresh out of trade school, out of college, maybe just out of the, CDL school. And then you have the people that are, I've been doing it this way for 40 years, and this is how I know how to do it, and I'm not going to change. How do you meet all of those expectations? How do you get the message across when you have, experience gaps, personality traits, generational differences? What are you finding? How are you finding success in meeting people where they're at to get your messages across?
I was hoping you were going to tell me. Teach me that secret sauce. At the end of the day, respect. I think demanding that employees respect one another is a big part of it. That starts with messaging right away. If you don't have a formal onboarding or orientation process with your company, I would get with your HR people and come up with one. There's an HR component to that. There's certainly a safety component to that. There's probably a security component to that. There's probably an IT component to that. So, get the people that all have a horse in that race and develop a good orientation program if you don't have it. And you can kind of set the tone in those meetings. You can build that initial relationship with your new folks to hopefully get them a little bit more comfortable and a little bit engaged. So I think that's certainly step one with new people. With the existing, I've always done it this way. Those can be a lot more challenging, right? A lot of times those are personal discussions that really hit on the why. And again, we've always done it this way. Well, we don't ride horses anymore either. Things do change. And as we get smarter, as technologies come, they have to accept that there's going to be improvements, there's going to be changes. And so those can be tougher conversations. I think in general, I've been really impressed with a lot of the young folks coming in to our organization. We have a lot right now. They're far more open-minded. They've grown up wearing seatbelts. I didn't wear one driving to high school because I just didn't do that back then. I'm old. But I think that a lot of the younger folks really are buying into it a little bit better. So that's really refreshing to see.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, especially in our industry. New employees, 21 years old to a 20-year veteran, there's some huge differences there. But I think it can be really good where the old guy can learn from the new guy, the new upcoming technologies, the new way of doing things instead of just staying stuck in their old ways. Where maybe, and this is a big challenge of maybe the new guy points out a safety hazard to the old guy. And it's going to be hard for that older veteran troop to listen, but maybe it's necessary. And on the flip side, maybe the old guy is help coaching the young rookie on the bigger picture. Because what do we like to do when we're 21, you're a new troop? What do you want to do? I want to drive fast, right? So when I became a trooper, right, I want to drive fast. Well, do we really need to, internally, do we really need to drive 140 miles an hour to something that doesn't really need it? That's where the learning curve then from maybe it's a training aspect from the older guy, the older veteran, or just kind of maybe a little knock on the, hey, knucklehead, like you need to get there. Now, if you don't get there, it's one thing. I also teach crash investigation, and I teach Alive at 25 for the Safety Council as well. It's one thing we always preach, though, when we're responding to crashes and we're teaching new employees. If we don't get to that crash, now we're creating a second situation. Now we're taking resources away from maybe an 8-year-old kid or something like that that's in a crash. We don't want to be part of the problem, right? We want to be part of the solution. So there's that bigger picture there of why do you not need to drive at an unreasonable speed and stuff like that. So it goes both ways, where that older employee can help coach the young, and the young can try to coach that older employee.
I think, I mean, excellent examples, and you know, Jason, I'm part of that generation that grew up where the seatbelt when I was a kid was my dad's forearm. Anytime he had a hard break was, how many here had that, right? And I have teenage drivers now, and just that generational change. When I watch my kids pull out of the driveway, they buckle up because that's all they've known from when they were little was car seats, then boosters, then seat belts. And if we can get people in those good habits early on, hopefully they can change the hearts and minds of some of the old timers, right? Kind of shifting gears, because we have a variety of jobs and industries represented here. What is one thing, and David, we'll start with you. I mean, everybody hears about oil and gas, but we have a statewide audience here. Not everybody lives in Williston or Watford or Tioga and really understands that industry. So is there a misperception or a misunderstanding of your specific business that you wish the general public would know? I mean, you're hauling heavy loads. They're around tractor trailers. I'm, a tourist going out to see the Badlands, and, I'm driving by your trucks. I mean, what would you like people to know to not only keep your drivers safe, but to keep them safe?
It's a tough one. I think our industry does get kind of labeled differently, and I think I'll just piggyback off your last question. Everybody was talking about how it's hard for like the older generation, and I was talking to some guys before this, the older generation to accept change and stuff like that. I feel like since 2006, the industry that we are in, if you're going to be in the oil and gas, you automatically are willing to accept change, because there's been, which is probably short, 20 years that I've experienced it, the oil and gas industry is nowhere near what it used to be. It is a very, very professional. If you were to look at the locations in North Dakota, our locations are pristine compared to anywhere else in the country. And then if you want to go outside further than that and go across the world, North Dakota is top tier in the oil and gas industry as far as professionalism and everything like that. Our trucks are DOT'd, following strictest guidelines possible from all the oil and gas companies and midstream companies. So it's not just, hey, that's these roughnecks out here driving this large equipment, just smashing around trying to get through the public to go produce some oil for some rich guy somewhere. No, it's a professional industry, always sharpening ourselves, continually getting better. Like I said, we set a pretty high standard in North Dakota in the oil and gas industry as far as cleanliness, professionalism, and just doing the right things.
Do you have any misperceptions? I'm sure there's none of the highway patrol, right? That you would like the public.
We're clean. Yeah.
Yeah. That you would like the public to know in terms of, I think about the inherent risks. I mean, every year we see your cars, we see DOT snowplows getting hit by the traveling public. I mean, what message do you have, to the motorists that you're sharing the roadways with, and those people that you're trying to protect doing your jobs?
Yeah, I think one thing is that we're people too. You guys are driving around. We may be enforcing the law, but we have a life. We have a family. We want to get home too. And that's actually one of my goals. Every day when I leave the driveway, I say, a little prayer. I say, please let me get home safe today. And that's it. That's it. So we're people too. And I think one big thing though, as far as the perception, is if we're stopping you, a lot of times our goal is education. Just a simple traffic stop could be a quick interaction with you about maybe you're only going 6-7 miles over the speed limit, something like that. May not seem like a big deal, right? but that little bit of interaction, maybe a warning, could maybe change behavior. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that change behaviors for that, so you can take that that self-responsibility to say, hey, maybe I need to slow down or put my seatbelt on or whatever it may be, whatever the case may be, because Vision Zero has it right. Zero fatalities, zero excuses, right? Personal responsibility to get to where you're going, whether you're at work in your industry or you're just coming home from Walmart. I think of that myself personally. I'm not worried about my driving. I get trained pretty well to drive pretty well. I'm worried about everyone else's driving. So I think being a defensive driver for everyone around, whether you're at work or coming home from Walmart, you should want to get home every time. You get from A to B, wherever it is. Maybe it's not home, but from A to B, every single trip, every single time.
I guess the one thing about the electrical industry that I guess I would like people to just understand, we have a lot of initiatives, call before you dig, and people know to call 811 and do the locates, and you don't want to dig into the ground and hit a line. But the reality of it is you need to look up too. We have a pretty large campaign right now called Watch the Wires. If you want to see a little bit about watchthewires.com. But it targets kind of the construction industry and the agricultural industries just to draw awareness to overhead power lines in our region. A lot of people think what we do at Minn Kota and the electrical industry is really dangerous work. I don't say that it's dangerous work. I say it's unforgiving work, right? If you do things wrong, if you don't maintain the required clearances from lines, that's when problems can occur. And so despite awareness, TV, radio ads, this campaign, in the last 5 years, we've seen probably a 25% increase in the number of line contacts. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Agriculture is getting bigger all the time, right? I remember back when I used to farm, I think we had a sprayer that we bought that was like 75 feet it covered, and whew, it was a big one. And it had foam markers, and we thought that was pretty cool. Now, modern farmers are like, a foam what? They don't even know what I'm talking about, because everything's precision farming, GPS. And it's amazing. It's super efficient. They use less chemical, less fuel. But if they don't take the time to program in the power lines and the power poles on that particular quarter of land or section of land, the auto steer in their tractor drives right through them. And so we've seen that happen multiple times. And so again, it all goes back to planning, making sure that they're doing hazard assessments on their fields or their construction sites, and remembering to look up, because there's a lot of hazards up there. And when you have an interaction with a power line, you don't always get a second chance. So in addition to increasing awareness, we also do a lot of education about what to do if you ever tangle with one. So just kind of how to survive it. But watchthewires.com would be a resource that everybody could go to learn a little about that.
All right. Well, I could sit and continue to ask you questions, but I know we've got a number of people in the audience here, and I warned you that this was coming. So are there questions from the audience that you would like to pose to the panelists, or if there's a specific question? And then certainly, too, if you're, don't want to ask in front of everybody, I know these three gentlemen will be around after this discussion if you want to have a private conversation as well. But anybody care to kick us off with an audience question? Don't everybody speak at once.
That your teenage daughters who are just starting bride, you think I could bring home to them that you're festive?
All right. So for those of you online, the question was about teenage drivers to the trooper here. What is your best tip for teenage drivers and keeping them safe?
Keep them home. No, I'm just kidding. If they haven't already, I would recommend a defensive driving class through the Safety Council or through DOT's got options on their website, or the Alive at 25 class. It is a 4-hour class. However, there's a ton of great information in there. So if you can get them to enroll in that, I highly suggest that. My 15-year-old just started driving, and I made him take that through driver's ed. But that's one thing I would recommend.
I will piggyback. I have two daughters. They are now 20 and 17, so a little bit ahead of you. I'll first off say I'm sorry. No, poor them. They got to have a safety director dad, so I was probably pretty hard on them about the little things, the seat belts. Despite that, the younger ones still managed to get a few tickets. But it's a really hard thing, and I think having a lot of time with them, even personally in the car, that period when they have their permit is really critical. And remember, as a parent, it's monkey see, monkey do. So you need to look at yourself and your own driving behaviors an awful lot. If you're speeding and you're doing things, they're going to do what they're taught. So you need to be a good role model, a good example, but you also need to really hold them accountable. I've found that there's Life 360, Find My iPhone, all those types of apps are pretty useful too. And also some of the insurance companies can have that little device put in the car to get a cheaper premium. That's another really good way to keep them watchdogged.
One more quick thing there. I would also suggest that really emphasize to them to limit distractions in the vehicle. You think of distraction, everyone thinks of a cell phone, right? Anything can be a distraction. I mean, a simple water bottle. You drop the water bottle on the floorboard, you're reaching over, you are not staying in your lane, I promise you. Not only that, teen drivers, what do they want to do? They want to get 3 of their friends in their car and drive around. So I'd buy a Chevy El Camino, so then there's only one passenger in the car. But seriously, I'd really emphasize the passengers in the vehicle, because passengers are a huge distraction for teen drivers.
What else do you have from the audience? We've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. Oh, right here.
Oh, I work for a small construction company, so more extensive technology is not an option for us. But we do have a lot of little accidents and things like that happen. What is the best way to get the buy-in when, and they obviously getting them involved, but a lot of times they look at me like, God, you're not, I'm still, so what's the good way to counter that feature? I do want to.
Sure. So the question is, from a smaller firm that doesn't have maybe some of the resources, and gaining the buy-in from people who are in the field when they're being told, safety rules and regulations from somebody that most likely is in an office, right? So how do you bridge that gap? Best practices, thoughts to help out in that area?
I would specifically try to find the leaders basically within this peer group or whoever's out in the field and just try to go top down. Like you said, monkey see, monkey do. If you can get buy-in from the leaders, the rest will trickle down. Those are the ones also that are training the new employees and the new hires. So if it's just standardized for them, the new guys coming up, that's the way it'll just be for them moving forward.
I would mirror that. You probably already have some basic safety manuals, some basic procedures based on OSHA regs. I would also work up kind of some sort of a worksite observation, job site form where you get out of the office and you get out there. And you may not be a complete and total expert right away, but ask one of them to go with you. And at the end of the day, there are certain things we all have to do. And the good thing about a lot of the regs is there's sometimes different ways to achieve it. And so I think engaging them in some of those solutions is really going to help with the buy-in. If you don't have a little safety committee, I develop one of those as well. It needs to be more than you. And so even if it's just 1 or 2 of the folks that are working out in the field, that at least once a month they sit down with you for a half an hour and they look over this procedure. But, if that can come from the top, that they're being asked to do that based on their years of expertise or their position, I think that goes a long way, because then that really shows that, your owner, your top administrator has really assigned them that role to help you and be a part of the solution. Now, sometimes that's hard right away. Donuts help for some of those safety meetings. But what I have found is sometimes your biggest opponent, if you can get them understanding the why, that, hey, this is going to happen one way or the other, we're asking for your input, sometimes the biggest opponent can become your biggest advocate once you flip them. So it's a little hard, but it's worth the work.
Just one quick, I'll dive in here just a second on this one. We obviously have a leadership structure, and sometimes our field guys don't want to, an email from the colonel who's sitting behind the desk, something like that. if you can get somebody in the field to help you get that buy-in, like maybe even run it through them, the other ones, maybe they don't even know that you're actually pulling the strings. But if they can hear it from a peer on the same ground level, it might go a little smoother that way too. That's what we'll do, some of that in the field. Maybe an idea comes from a trooper in Fargo instead of a supervisor in a leadership role. It goes a long way.
All right. Any more from the audience? We got time for one more. Yes. That's a great question. So we'll repeat that. So in respect to safety leadership, what did you learn the hard way, and how has that shaped how you're a safety leader today?
What I would say, it's good to be proud and take pride in your work, but there's no place for arrogance. And so at the end of the day, it's really about kindness, and it's really, look up. There's a lot of books on this topic, but some of the fundamental principles of leadership. Doesn't matter if we're talking about safety leadership or leadership in general, but if something goes right, you pass on all the praise, but you take all the blame. If something goes wrong, you take ownership of that. You just have to really focus on that kind of servant leadership mentality to build the trust. I think in my younger years, I was probably far more arrogant or standoffish than I am now. I've softened, and I've realized a lot more that, truly it's about those relationships that you build. And that's the foundation of everything. When you can build that relationship at a personal level, you can get that trust and buy-in, but, it has to come from a place of compassion and caring. That's probably the single biggest thing that I've learned.
Myself, in 20 years in the oil and gas industry, twice on location, I was present when somebody passed away, and it was complacency each time. It was complacency in the smallest of things, and it cost somebody their life. So just removing that from the equation is important.
I'm by no means a leader at all. However, I'm a guy on the ground level that will preach safety to everyone in our agency as well. Back in 2022, I was at a road closure incident, and I got hit, kind of sideswiped in a head-on fashion while I was in my patrol car. It was a road closure. I did not have my seatbelt on at the time because I kept getting in and out, telling people the road is closed. So after that, literally, I think within a second after I got hit, I was already thinking, before I got hit, I thought I was going to die right there. After I got hit, I checked on the other guy, did what I needed to do, and then I thought, all right, I need to be a little bit more observant. Luckily, I was just enough observant where I had like 100 feet in front of me before I got out of the way. But being able to preach that to everyone else is I feel like I have a little bit more meaning, a little more backing on that.
Awesome. Great questions. I want to thank our panelists for being here today. Just in wrapping up, we're here for education. We're here sharing best practices. You've done a great job in sharing your personal stories of seeing the highest of the highs and some of the lowest of the lows. For those here and those online, if you could give one piece of advice to an organization, just one action they can do starting today that would improve workplace safety for everyone in North Dakota, what would that be? I mean, what's your one piece of advice that those in the audience, those watching online, you'd really like them to know after today?
I guess my piece would be scenario-based training, not just the one time, but over and over and over and over again. Get that repetitiveness built in, so then in the real life emergency or the real life scenario, you can prevent an emergency.
Just continue to raise the bar for yourself and for your company.
I'd say talk about safety. And what I mean by that is, we all get stuck in our office and stuck behind our desks, and sometimes it's hard to just carve out the time, but fill your coffee cup, get up and go for a walk, or maybe go out in the field and visit the folks, bring them a pizza, bring them something, and just say, hey, how's it going today? Do y'all need anything? Is there anything we can do to help? Again, we're there to support, but asking questions and really just getting out there and talking about safety. That's the single biggest thing you can do in the workplace, but also at home, whether it's those teenage drivers or the parents or grandparents that are getting to the point where, gosh, should they really be driving anymore? These are all things that we all have to deal with, and they're all best handled by in-person conversations and talking about the actual issue. Those issues can be very easy to avoid. I implore you all that don't avoid it. You got to talk about it.
Well, great. And Jason, David, Trooper Bitts, thank you for being here today. Thank you for being partners with us. Thank you for sharing, your resources, what's worked, what can work, and giving our audience a lot to think about and a lot that they can act on today. So that will conclude our panel discussion. We want to thank everybody for being here. Those of you in person, again, those of you online, thank you for spending the morning with us. Thank you for being here. And again, get home safe.